Can you hear me? Can you hear me? So now I spoke in brief about Kenshin Shurutsenge's liberation story. I have received a copy of an old liberation story of Shurupsenge, and I think if we read this, we can learn about his life. So now I'd like to speak in general, about how Churutsenge was invited to see Mikyo Dorji and give him full ordination. So as I mentioned earlier, the Mahasiddhist Sangye Nyempa had a bad foot, as I said. So one day, when his foot was hurting and was actually very painful, Mikyo Dorje was with him, and so at that time, Sangye Nyempa said to him, because of my bad foot, I thought I should give offerings of Shamachuga Japa. And he thought that he should give. He wanted to give and he could have given the offerings, but he thought it would he thought it might offend the seventh Karmapa, and so he didn't offer the fourth Shama Chenga Chuda these offerings. And so later, in a vision or in a dream or in some sort of pure vision, whenever he saw Chenga Rinpoche, his face was not clean, not clear. It was a little bit fuzzy. And so, for instance, when he thought about Shama Chenga, his foot would hurt, and so later, and so I think it's because I didn't serve Shama Rinpoche well that my foot went bad, he thought, and so for that reason. So I think that it would be good if you could take the full ordination from the Shama Rinpoche, but because of the leaders of the encampment and because of many other people, said that the previous Shama Chenga Chudak had broken his samaya and so forth. That's a little difficult. So he asked him what he thought. And so at that point, then Mikyo Dorje said, I will do whatever you tell me to do. And Nyempa Rinpoche said that it made a little plan. And so they're probably in the region of Kham. And so they prepared to go to central Tibet. So though they made these plans, they did not work out. And Chengar Rinpoche passed away quickly. Chengar Rinpoche passed away quickly, and the people in the encampment were reluctant to go to central Tibet, and so Shamach had passed away. So he was not able to receive the full ordination from the Shamachenga Shamachudak. And so when he thought about whom he should receive the vows from, he spoke with other people about this. And the reason for this is that he sent a letter to Karma Chinpa saying, you should come and see me. And within that, he said, I'd like to take the full ordination. And so he also sent it to, who would be the best Lama for me to take full ordination from? And Karma Chinpa said, so that Kenshin Chuda Sutra is really very good. And so he shared that opinion. So there's shared that opinion with Mika Dorje, as is discussed. And Kenshin Chuda Jessa himself, what he said is that in the past, when the seventh Karmapa Chuda Jatso came to Gendon Gan, that there's a really good interdependent connection. And the reason is that at that time, so at that time they had invented a golden procession to welcome him, and they were in the procession. So each person had a different thing to hold in their hands. And they stand in a line. And so what he had was a golden mandala. It was a really beautiful mandala. And there were piles of jewels of many different colors. And so he was holding this. So it was basically his turn to read that. And because of that connection, and likewise, when they were making the offerings, is able to make an offering of he's able to make an offering of the it's his turn to make that offering of that. And also when the Karmapa was later giving gifts, the seventh Karmapa, he had the fortune to receive a very nice namdar, or outer robe, from the seventh Karmapa. Likewise, when the seventh Karmapa Chuda Jatso went down to the region of Kongpo, at that time he thought, and if you read the stories of the previous Buddhas, they would throw grains, actually they'd throw lentils. And so for that reason, he threw a few grains or few lentils, and it's the mentioned, and so he made an aspiration to rouse bodhicitta. And at that point, the seventh Karmapa looked at him and smiled. And so from that point, he thought that, and so in this lifetime, these made the connections for me to need to be the Kempo to give Mika Dorje full ordination. And so this is what Kenshin Chuda Semge himself said. So one thing that you all need to know is that from the time of the third Karmapa, Rangjung Dorje, almost all of the Karmapas had taken vows at the Tso Gendungang monastery. And the Tso Gendunganpa and the various Karmapas had a great connection. And so then there's a saying at Kempo Kindergarten that for each of them, each of the incarnations of the Karmapas was an incarnation of the 16 arhats would appear for each of them. So Chodip Sangye was said to be an emanation of the arhat Yanakjung, and so the person from which there are many different lamas from whom the Karmapas could take the four different. But at the Gendun Sampa, when you talk about the four places, this is one of the main monasteries where the Vinaya was emphasized practice, and so they had most respect for that, considered very important, and so the Karmapas would go there, and then receive the lineage of vows from there, and so for those reasons. And so it's decided that Chodip Sangye would give him for the full ordination vows. Mr. Dorje wrote a similar letter which said, "I wish to take the as a full ordination. You have the qualities of a venerable noted upholder of the Vinaya, so please come here. If you think that the road will be hard and do not come, you will fallen away from the Bodhisattva's conduct." This is a rather strict letter. When Chodip Sangye opened up the letter, it's at the very time that they were blowing a conch in the puja. So, this is a really good connection, and so he was very pleased about this. But at that time, how old was he? He was 79 years old. 79 years old already. He would have to go from central Tibet all the way down to Kongpo, which is a several months journey. For one thing, he was very old. And second thing is, it was very difficult. There weren't any cars or airplanes in those days. There were no trains. You had to ride the horse, and you had to go like that all the day. I don't know if they even read the horses. There are also people who didn't read horses, people who didn't read animals, ride animals. He said, "I can't come." And he sent that in a response saying, "I can't come." Micho Dorje once again sent somebody. He sent people to come and insist that he come. And so, since he was so insistent, and so it's because the teachings, because he had such a profound teaching, because of the teachings and the gentleman, because he had such a profound connection with the previous between the Tsokde and the previous Karmapa, so he decided to go to Kamada. So from the third day, the 9th month of the year of Pig, he went down. He met the great translator, and I'm not sure which one it is. I think it's probably Shalu Lotsawa. It said he met a great Lotsawa. So I think it's probably Shalu Lotsawa. And they discussed the Dharma. And then eventually, he arrived at the great encampment in the 11th Tibetan month. When they arrived on the great encampment, then that same day, he met Mikyo Dorje. Then he rested for a few days because he was very old, right? And he had walked, he had come the whole way, so he needed a few days to rest. And then on the 23rd day, he offered the full ordination vows. And on that day, there weren't any clouds or anything in the sky. It was a very clear sky. And within that, there was a rainbow in the sky, and rain of flowers followed. And that. And every day after that, he went to see Mikyo Dorje. And they discussed the difficult points of Sutra and Tantra. And I think that he probably also introduced him to the Shentung view at that time, too. And he gave Mikyo Dorje the empowerment of Antayus and the initiation of Red Spear Vaishravana. And so as this is the connection that the histories record. So Mikyo Dorje himself wrote Namtara of Sangye Nyempa Rinpoche, in which it says, At that time, I received the blessings of serving the great Kempo of Tsok Gendundang, an individual who was emanated by the great siddhas from the tradition of the omniscient Jonang, who was certain to go from this life to the presence of the Dharma King in Shambhala. The Guru, precious Buddha Shudat Senge, and the great being born as Jai Kamache, who transcends humans, a master of yoga, a god victorious over all directions, whose mind has been ripened well by samidal and disciplines. Also, it says in autobiography, says, I received full ordination from a sangha, including the scholar and great meditator Chudup Sengye and the great meditator yogi Kamachinepa. They were the abbot and acharya, and they were like nurses who raised infinite intelligence about the sutras tongues. Because of them, the accumulation and purification of listening and contemplation in mind is, in this degenerate time, not limited. And so what Mikki Dorje himself was saying here is, so in this lifetime, one of the greatest the greatest things he did was to receive the full ordination. There's no greater deed that he did than that. And to receive this from a great emanation of an arhat, from him was good. And so if you even would to speak about it, there's no way you could describe it. And so he also kept all a set of all of Chudup Sengye's hair that Chudup Sengye had cut at that time. He kept that, and within that there appeared many relics. In Khenchen Chudup Sengye himself, so on the day that he gave the full ordination to Mikki Dorje, there was a high pass. Excuse me, on the way to see this, he went to Khumbu Bale, and when he climbed up there, and when he resting his mind and body, and he dreamt that he went up there. And so for that, and so my being able to, so he was called the Jodan Kempo. The reason why he was called the Jodan Kempo, and the reason he was called this, is because he's from one of the four of they would so he never, because he didn't ever eat food after, he's called a Jodenpa, because he only sat on a single foot. So basically meaning that he'd eat in one meal. So he thought to himself, by giving the full ordination, my intentions have been fulfilled. And when I gave him, and when he also when he gave Mikki Dorje the Amitabha, he also dreamt that he made many tsatsas. And each of these then multiplied into many, they covered a great area. So this is a dream that he had. And so for that reason, and so he said that because of this, that Mikki Dorje would have a long life and vast activity. And Khenchen Chudup Sengye said to Mikki Dorje's student Sanjay Padrup, the day that I met Mikki Dorje, I felt a great faith. The way that he spoke and acted with his body, speech, and mind, like there are no stains of attachment or aversion, and that's how it appeared to me. And when speaking to him, when speaking about the main points of the Dharma, and when we discussed and he asked about these, he'd get right to the main point. He would always get straight to the point of the Dharma. And so if he's someone so young, for someone so young, has a really deep foundation. So if you had a discussion from one today, another, the discussion got brighter and brighter and weightier and weightier. His intelligence is growing stronger and stronger. And this is something that we ordinary sentient people cannot get our minds around or conceive of. And so for that reason, if you can And so it's that the Karmapa is really as pure an individual as described in the life stories of the Karmapas. And so in this way, he praised Mikado Dorje very highly. And likewise, when he said that when I pass away, he said, I'm going to go to Shambhala and meet the Karmapa Chittachatso and so forth. And so he said, this is a great fortune that he had. So after this, I'd like to speak about the fourth of Mikado Dorje's main gurus, or Chotle Nabar Gyewe Hla, also known as Karma Chinnepa. He was born in Dakpo, and he was born. It's in many different areas. There is a Kurapa, Lord Kurapa. So there is the of Kurapa, and he was born in the family of this lord. There are many, of course, in that region there are many lords, but Kurapa was the greater lord. So he was born to one of his commanders of his army named Dungchen Sunam Tashi, and also his name Sunam Tashi, and the mother was named Richin Dulma in the 1456. And he was a nephew of Tashi Namje, who was a Sakya scholar. When he was little, he entered Sungkar Monastery. Excuse me, Sungkar Medical College. So there are two lineages of medical treatment in Tibet. There's a Chang and the Sur lineage. And so Sur, the Sur monastic is primarily maintained by the Karmakaji lineage, and within that, the Surkhan Nanyi Dorje was like the real source of the Sur tradition medical studies, and so we went to study there, and he also studied the Nyingma teachings on the Che. Then at the age of 17, he went forth with the elder Lhundit Sampo. Then later, at the age of 37, he took full ordination of Shama Chenga Chura in Neodong. And so he took it one day, and the next day, he took it one day. The next day, he had to act as the acharya or master in a full ordination ceremony because there's so many people coming to take as the vows. And at the age of 20, he took from Sangye Pel, the scholar of the five treatises of Maitreya, he took the Bodhisattva vows. We talk about this scholar of the five treatises, Sanjay Pel. He was the first one to be given the name Rabjamba, given the title of Rabjamba. And he had many students, Gorampa, and Gesawa and Jambakunga Sunam, and many others. And among them, Karma Chinnepa is one. So in Tibet, he is the first Rabjamba, the first to have the title of Rabjamba. When we talk about, these days we talk about Geshe Hla Rampas and Dorams and Ram. That Ram means from Rabjamba. So before before that, people would say Kashipa. Kashipa would have the four words. It would mean someone who had passed a debate test on the four great texts. And from Gyatso Dhamma Rinchen added the five, and they added one. They called and it 6 times. So Gyatso Dhamma Rinchen was the first of these called the Kachupa, the 10 lineage or the 10 text test. In any case, when we talk about from Sanjay Pel, the scholar of the five trilogies, he took the Bodhisattva vows, as well as the Guya Samaja Mandala, and therefore the mantra vows as well. And then also, there was someone named Sharad Abjampa called the second Milarepa, and he received the 6 dharmas of Nigo and Sukha Siddhi and so forth. and also from Duchin Chubur, who was probably a student of Chodo Gyatso. From him, he received the fivefold Mahamudra and other teachings. In a Sojin room, there was a Nyalde Drum monastery, and he taught the Prajnaparamita there in the midst of 700 Sangha members. And they followed that with Lopan Sene Gompo and with Geshe Genan Lundrup, the Jamlin Pension Sunam Nanjal. That he made Dharma connections with all of them, received many teachings. And from Gongko Dorje Dempa, he received Vajrakilai and the Vajrasang and other texts. There's also a master named Desangpa, from whom he received the Sanskrit grammar, Tibetan grammar, and other general fields of knowledge. And once again studied with Sanjay, the Jamjen Ramchampa, Sanjay Pal. He studied the Nagarjuna study of Sukuya Samaja. As we also studied the ornament of clear realization, the commentary on validity, Vinaya, Abhidharma, the root text and the middle, and entered into the middle way and became learned in all of these. Also at that time, there was a Panchen Buntrak, Sumpa. He studied the 5 treatises of Mantra and Amitaya Sutra and other sutras. He studied Prajnaparamita, the thunder of scripture and logic with Panchen Dundup Gyatsam, the wish-fulfilling tree, and the pile of flowers, the text on composition, among others. And so he received many teachings, empowerments, and transmissions from many great scholars and meditators. And later he thought they ought to go he thought he should go to Tibet in the great monastery of Tsetang, but his elder brother summoned him, and so he was not able to go. So later, he received Kachon Wangchu's instructions on the 6 yogas from Shama Chögyam Chögyam and many other teachings. And then on the 7th day of the 5th lunar month of the female fire shape year, he met Chodo Gyatso, and from that time on, he never thought of Chodo Gyatso as anything other than an actual Buddha. And there's also a letter that Chodo Gyatso in the letter that Chodo Gyatso, he said many places, said, we too have a strong connection from aspirations in previous lives, saying that they're master and student. So for many lifetimes before, he developed the certainty that Chodo Gyatso was a Lama whom he had studied with for many lifetimes. He also received the instructions on the indivisible prajna awareness, and at that time, Chodo Gyatso said, if you promise to uphold my lineage, I will give it to you. And so Karmatam said, I will uphold this Kagyu lineage, and made that commitment. And then at that time, and then only then did he give him an experiential instruction on the 6 yogas of Naropa. And that instruction took 5 months. And during that time, he was staying near the encampment in a small tent, I think. And so when he'd go to the teachings, he'd go to the Karmapa. When in other times, he would go back and stay in retreat and practice. And he developed the amazing signs that are taught and explained in the text. And so then he received teachings on the co-emergent yoga of Mahamudra, the 4 dharmas, the jewel ornament of liberation, and so forth. He received teachings on Vajravarahi and Jawa Gyatso, the middle way views, and the minor texts that teach on how the Rangtong and Shentong are not contradictory, and as well as the transmission of Rangjung Dorje's complete works. He also received detailed explanations of the profound principles in the outer commentary 5 times. And he also had teachings on the 2 short texts. So there are 4 of these great. These received instructions on the 4 short texts by Bhaktivinoda. And he also received the empowerments of the 5 mandalas of the Ngol lineage, including the instructions. and so he followed Chudachaso as his root guru. Then following that, there was a student of Chudachaso's named Jamba Gyatso, from whom he received teachings on Chu. From Siddhartha Bhaja, he received the Guhyama Samaja tradition as well as Krishnapada tradition of Chaksamvara. And so he received a lot of teachings from many different masters, and I don't need to list them all in detail. Now, to discuss how he so in central Tibet, he went to look for Chokor Lungpo, and he built there's a Sakya monastery. There was a big statue of this statue that was 25 palms tall. So a palm is about that size. And so he built a statue that's that size. So at that time, so in the region of Mun, he said that he developed a paper factory that he made different places, to make a different size and different thickness and so forth. And so this later it was called the Chujel paper, and this is considered the best paper for printing text. And so this was developed by Karma Chinne. He also was at a place called Teura. He founded a shutter in the Sakya tradition. Later, then Chujel Chapa invited the seventh Karmapa and offered the Chokor Lungpa monastery that had been built along with all its statues and so forth, as well as a sangha of 500 monks, including his younger brother. And he offered them these were the Karmapa. And the Karmapa appointed Karma Trinipa as its abbot. So Karma Trinipa probably was given to him at that time. So Karma Trinipa is actually a rank, right? And so it's given to him at that time. So it's when he was made the abbot there, he made a reliquary statue for Goshri Pachadindab that was basically 1 story tall. Then there were 500 monks at the Chokor Lungpa, so he divided into 4 groups and started the beginning instruction on them. In particular, he taught primarily the teachings of the Chapa, and so it's basically from that area, from Chapa Chokor. So at that time when Chapa and Karma Trinipa at that time, it was like the time when these teachings flourished the most. And then once Chokor Lungpa became well, then he once again offered it all in entire to the 7th Karmapa. And as his replacement, the 7th Karmapa appointed Tashi Namgyal, Chatashi Namgyal too. He's probably a student of the 7th Karmapa, and so there are many texts by him, many examinations of this Rubutapa. So this is a way of determining whether talking about examining materials, look of jewels or bells and so forth. So Karma Trinipa himself spent some time at a mountain retreat. And then the Garchen went to Lhasa. And when the Garchen went to Lhasa, then Karma Trinipa also went with them. So at that time, the great Angson, because he had a rank, gave him so he's put at the head of the right-hand row. So, and at that time, in Lhasa, there's a Karma Datsang monastery called Karma Kansang Monastery in Lhasa. So the place is still there. So in the Karma Datsang monastery, he was appointed its lama, and he was allowed to have a parasol above his And he's said to have attendants and retainers and so forth. And so he gained that right at that point. So at that point, at the Ramoche monastery, he began teachings on the Lamp of the Three Worlds, the seventh Karmapas text on Prajnaparamita. And then some in the area around the Jo extension, he laid a foundation for Tupten Chokora, a new place. Now there's some difficulties or complications that happen because at that point in the area of Phloxen there's Drepung and Sera and other monasteries, right? And so they misunderstood this, and the Karmapas doing this, making a big monastery there. So they thought he was trying to take power. And so there was a conflict that arose at that time. So I'm not going to speak too much about that now. And so this was, he built this place called the Tupchen or Tupten Chokora that was built there. And he built that, and they completed the temple and so forth, and gathered a great sangha of monks. And so it was primarily. And so he was the primary abbot and leader of the monastery. And the plan was that this would be a monastery where they would practice the Vinaya. And the reason for this is that at that time, the seventh Karmapa himself had a pure vision. And it's because at that time, around the Jo statue, there were lots of lay people living in that area, and for that reason, thought that was not such a good circumstance for the Jokan. So I thought if there were monks who practiced the Vinaya purely in that area, then it would be very good. So he made that prediction, and so also the Lord of Lhasa offered him the place, and so he built the monastery. But not long after it was built, then Chottajasa passed away, and after he passed away, then during the time of the eighth Karmapa, they didn't really take good care of it, because in the past there was a conflict of that. He said that there's this source for conflict, and so not to take much care. Later, the buildings fell into disrepair and it fell down, and there was grass growing through them and so forth. So after the seventh Karma passed away, in order for to fulfill the meanings of there was a period. So he'd fill his wishes. So the Tulku from the period he made great offerings in order that this would occur. So the tradition of making great offerings in order for Tulkus to quickly to make the Tulku appear quickly. So at that point, Kalapana made a great offering, including a lot of salt. Actually, in salt you need it. You can do without sugar, but you can't do without salt. So since you absolutely have to have salt, so he gave 2,000 bushels of salt, because in the old days, salt was considered really important. Salt and gold were considered to be about the same in importance, and so for that reason, he gave 2,000 bushels of salt. And in the region in the Tujin monastery, he built a large statue of the Buddha. And at that point, there were 300 members of the Sangha. Yeah, then in the 1504, the Woodbird year, so Karma Datsang at that point. So they needed that was primarily they needed a new Shedra, so they founded the Karma Lekshiling. So the Chögyal Lama Phuntsok has founded a new monastery called a Karma Lekshiling there, and he probably used the name of Karma Lekshiling as to take the name for his monastery. I've heard people say this to me. So this Lekshiling monastery he built there, and it was primarily a Shedra. And he also built a place called Chanchupling, the Chime Chanchup Palace. He started a Shedra there, And then primarily they taught the Tantra. So the Lekshe Ling was primarily the sutras, and Changchuk Ling was primarily a Tantric Kshetra. So Lekshe Ling, he built many statues of body, speech, and mind there. Now I don't need to explain them all now. So in brief, Jigamba Trungpa had founded several monasteries, and the main of them, and the main ones were the Shedras that taught the Sutra and the Tantra, as well as the practice of the Vinaya. And then in 1527, he met Mikyu Dorje. And he taught him a lot of Dharma about the Sutra and Tantras. Not only that, along with Kenshin Chudit Sengye, he gave the 8th Karmapa Mikyu Dorje the vows of full ordination. And so he became a very important Lama of Mikyu Dorje. And Mikyu Dorje himself also wrote over 10 prayers and long life prayers and so forth. And when he said that he was someone who had received a level of supreme worldly dharma on the path of joining. And so saying that he had basically achieved some level on the path. So now his collected works have over 10 volumes, and among them, you can, and most of these are still extant to this day. I think you can still get them. In the end, at the age of 84, in 1539, he passed away. And after he passed away, his students, he had many students among the Sakya lineage, he had many among the Kagyu lineage. And the reason for this is that he initially was Sakyapa, and a holder of the Sakya lineage. As I mentioned, he was like the main student of the Chamchen Ravchen Sangye Pe, and later became the student of Chura Chatso, and became an important upholder of the Kagyu lineage. And so he has respected both the Sakya and the Kagyu, and for that reason, he had many students from both the Sakya and the Kagyu. So the way so I think it's probably best for me to speak about how Mikyu Dorje followed him as a guru, and I'll speak about them tomorrow. And the reasons, because I think about today, my brain it's not working too well today. So I don't know if it's got tired today or something. It's not working well today. And so for here, I'll leave it at this point. So I'll speak about how he followed Karma Trinlepa, and how Mikyu Dorje studied the various areas of knowledge. This is not very clear in many Dharma histories or liberation stories, but I found one text that it is very clearly described, and so I'll describe that tomorrow. And so that is what we'll do. But the biggest worry I have is that, so we've gone through 7 days of teachings, but we've only gone through 3 or 4 stanzas. So I'm thinking, when am I going to finish the entire good deeds and when am I even going to be halfway through it? So I do worry about this, but I'm pretending that I'm not worried, and still taking my time, and thinking. Otherwise, if I worry too much, then I think it'll create faults and obstacles for teaching. So as much as I can, I'm going to try to teach the entire good deeds and praise Ishvara thoroughly. But I don't want to just read it as if reciting a text. It's important that I tell the important parts. So even if I don't do the whole thing now, then there's no other point. So maybe we'll have to continue next year. But my plan is to teach them in full this year. So I thought it'd be good to explain this to you all now. Now, so this is not something that's really important, but something to say on the side. The other day, I spoke a little bit about the steward of Changzi, right? When I spoke about that, many people have been asking me about this. Where is this Changzi? Where is this steward? When you ask, then they probably think that they need to go look for him and make difficulties for him. I said, Changzi passed away, I said. Because if you need to go make a fuss about it, it's better not to go. If you go. Otherwise, you'd have to go where Changzi has gone, and that wouldn't be good. So, better to stay where you are. So when I spoke about this, I sort of slipped out on the side. I didn't think I should speak about that at first, but it just sort of came out. When you're thinking about the difficulties and problems that Mikyo Dorje faced, and in order to make it clear, I just decided to add a little bit from my own life. But the Changzi himself has passed away. So I don't have any thought that he's did something to me, so I need to get back at him. So I just remember him when I intentionally try to think about it, but otherwise I hardly recall him. So that is it. So thank you. Now we will recite the closing prayers.
Jizo kendo mi je